Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Wrestling with Awareness. And a special thank you to Larry Zbyszko for being the first WWE Hall of Famer to be on the show. This week's episode was very good, and I do quickly want to apologize because it does not have the highest production value, as me and Larry did have some problems reaching over Skype, so we had to record the interview over the phone. But this discussion was amazing. We speak about professional wrestling, mental health awareness, the world in general, and Larry Zbyszko's amazing outlook on life itself. So I highly suggest you listen to this in-depth conversation because it was a blast. Hope you guys enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new episode of Wrestling with Awareness. I am your host, Vikram Prashar. Today I have a huge guest for everybody. He has a ton of accomplishments in WCW, WWE, and professional wrestling in general, and he is a WWE Hall of Famer. Today we are going to wrestle the mind with the living legend himself, Larry Zbyszko. How are you doing today, Larry?
Well, I'm good, and I apologize to everybody because I tried to get on Skype with you, but I could see me and then you and then me, and then it didn't work.
Yeah, no problem at all. No problem at all. Technical difficulties happen, but you know what?
I know. I look good, too.
Yeah, honestly, you know what? Things happen. We've had interviews over the phone before, so no need to worry. This isn't the first and definitely won't be the last either. You know how technology can be.
Yeah, maybe we'll get canceled.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe it will. Maybe we will. But
well, you know what? One thing, even about mental peace of mind, I canceled myself from the stupidity of the world. It's going. I mean, I don't do face plant or Facebook. I don't do social media. I don't tweet. I have my little flip razor phone that, I talk and text, that's it.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And I think in a way it's good, especially these days, to stay a little bit disconnected. Obviously, me being a young guy, 18 years old, I'm definitely present on social media, but I see even like when I look at the wrestlers out there who aren't that active on social media, I can't even blame them, to be honest with you. I can't even blame them because there's so much that goes into it. So first of all, people care about numbers too much, and then of course it can be pretty toxic as we talk about like cancel culture and things like that. So I definitely can't blame you.
It's sad things. I mean, I hear that people, especially younger people who have been kind of hypnotized by staring at their phones most of the time, have committed suicide because someone they don't even know cyberbullied them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I actually had that question there for you. I was going to ask you about that because we did briefly speak over the phone about things we could speak about in this episode. And that's definitely like a relevant problem in the world today. Cyberbullying and
I can't figure that out. I mean, you got some cowardly nerd in his parents' basement, and they can talk tough when there's no one around. But, just a bunch of cowards. I mean, it's just weird. Yeah, the less technology, the better.
Yeah. It literally just cowardly nerds. And they have an effect on everything. They even have effect on professional wrestling. You're a legend in the business. I'm going to be an upcoming professional wrestler. And they'll down talk people in the wrestling business. What's your opinion on like social media in professional wrestling and how that's changed the business?
Well, I blame the wrestlers for some of that because in my day, keeping everything in the wrestling business a secret was one of the important things. They used to have a name for it, like kayfabe, And the reason they kept everything within the small brotherhood of wrestlers, they would never talk a certain way to fans because they wanted the fans to have the most fun and the most excitement they could have. So if the fans didn't know everything, they could watch and get their imagination and their emotions going. It was a lot more fun for the fans and more exciting. But now the wrestlers go onto social media, but they don't talk like their character. You know, I mean, if you're a bad, nasty a-hole on TV, but then they're on social media talking to everybody like they're all good buddies and talking about smart things and, you know, really kind of burying themselves. And after a while, then the fans lose interest in them because they know all about them, so then they want to know about somebody else.
It's
so
exposing.
It's not good for the wrestler. It takes the fun away from the fans.
Yeah, and I think because I've even had Al Snow on the show before, and I've watched his seminars, and honestly, he described it the best way possible when he spoke about kayfabe. He said, people have known wrestling is predetermined for years. Kayfabe isn't making it seem real. It's having enough respect for the fans to not insult their intelligence and not hop in the same car as your opponent the same night. So I agree with you.
You know what? I go down to the PC. I haven't been there in about a year because of the stupid flu stuff. But I go down there and help out with some of the young guys. And, you know, one of my buddies is a finishing coach. I'll do his class once in a while because he runs out of stuff. But, you know, I mean, I'll tell him, like in 1980 when me and Bruno had the big feud and before that, people were so emotionally involved and so excited to be there and so much in love with a good guy like Bruno. When Bruno bled and started bleeding and fell on the mat, people in the audience had heart attacks. Some died. It was almost like a joke. Bruno could stop killing our fans. But, you know, I tell the guys at the PC that, the younger guys today, and they go, really? I mean, they can't fathom that.
Yeah, and I've heard so many stories, especially back in the day, as you spoke about Bruno and like fans having heart attacks over things. In a way, even sometimes it'd be a little bit dangerous, but the wrestlers were so invested in presenting the business in the best way possible that they didn't mind. Some wrestlers would even have weapons on them just for self-defense in case a fan who doesn't necessarily know what's going on backstage.
Oh, yeah. Well, I carried a gun for years because I got stabbed, shot at, tried to get run off the road. I had my car smashed.
Yeah, of course.
It was riots in the ring. There'd be 6-7 people jump in the ring trying to beat me up and stab me in the ring in some wrestling show.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was a different world. I mean, Freddie Blassie lost an eye. Someone in Boston threw an egg, hit him right in the eye, and the egg exploded in the egg, so he lost an eye and had one eye for years.
Yeah, because things were so hostile back then, and especially you spoke about Bruno Sammartino, especially when you're working a big baby face like him, because...
Yeah, and it really wasn't hostile because the bad guy, I mean, I went out of my way to make people hate me. The way I did interviews, the way I looked, the way I walked to the ring, people believed I was a real a-hole.
Well, even
they really loved,
I was going to say...
they love Bruno, but that's what's missing today is the guys don't know how to connect, and they bury themselves in the ring and on social media.
Yeah, exactly, because I've even, like as someone who studies matches, I've studied your match with Bruno. I believe it was January of 1980, and it was the match where you had cracked him over the head with the steel chair, but even before that high spot, you guys had such smart ring psychology, really selling the fact that it was rookie versus veteran, and you, the rookie, were getting very frustrated every time Bruno would reverse you, counter you, he'd kick out real fast, just simple things like that.
It told a story that the people could get into and use their imaginations, but they didn't know what was going to happen. You know, it was easy to pretend and kind of a lost art today.
Do you think that it's possible we could ever go back to professional wrestling being that way, or do you think social media has overexposed it to the point where there's no going back?
I mean, if I was one of the wrestlers today, and I even think the WWE encourages social media because then you build up fans, but if you're going to be on social media, you can't be the real you. you've got to be what you are on TV. So if you're a good guy and you make good comments or talk to the fans on social media nicely, that's great. But if you're a bad guy and if you do make a comment on social media, it's got to be a nasty a-hole comment, and not too much of it, because you don't want to step out of character.
Yeah, definitely. Have you looked into MJF over at All Elite Wrestling? Because he's really depicting that asshole heel type character, even on social media. And people are such big fans of him, including myself, because it's a breath of fresh air. It's someone who's actually going out of their way to keep that moniker of who they are on TV and who they are on social media.
Well, you know what? I mean, your question, I think that professional wrestling may not be able to go back to the day of the heart attack, but if you look at what happened 20 years ago, I mean, in the 90s, wrestling was in a little slump, but then the New World Order started. And it felt like you were back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, people were throwing crap in the ring. They were diving over the security rail trying to punch out Bischoff. I mean, it was great. Ratings were at 11. So, I mean, I really believe in my heart, like you may not go back to the heart attack days, but if you did wrestling different than you're doing today, the fans would have a lot more fun getting into it. And if you make it easy to pretend, and they'll get just as pissed as they were in the 70s.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. And I think in one way, social media could even help us get back to that, because I think social media has made society a little bit more sensitive, and it would be a little bit easier to maybe even push on the buttons of the fans today, because I think society...
Well, you could, again, if you did it right. If you're a good guy, great. If you're a bad guy, don't use it much. And if you do use it, say something nasty. You can...
Yeah. It's literally just depicting yourself in a negative light without.
It's an extension of the TV.
Yeah.
It's what it should be, but they don't do that.
Do you think, because as someone who, especially in this day and age with the growth of MMA, do you think some of the guys these days maybe looking at the way some of these MMA fighters portray themselves on social media, if they try to do it that way, or maybe the way that boxers do it, do you think that could be beneficial?
No, you're asking me, Vikram, and I don't listen to social media. I don't, like I said, I don't do face plant or book, or I don't tweet. I don't have a social media, so I don't know what anybody is saying out there. Personally, unless someone tells me something, I have no idea what these guys are talking about. I mean.
Yeah.
And I like it that way.
Yeah, I can't blame you. I cannot blame you for preferring it that way. But I'm
glad I lived when I did, because I mean, younger people today in the business world, I mean, the smartphone with all the apps and things is probably a necessity. But it's just really getting to the point, I think, when I see people at the airport, families and stuff, and there's 100 and some people waiting for a plane. No one's talking to anybody. They're just sitting there staring in their phone. It's starting to take over technology instead of being in harmony with nature and your own imagination,
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a distraction for sure. And as someone who's coming up, I'm guilty of it. Like there's definitely been times where I've been on my phone as a young man and probably wasn't living in the moment as much as I should have been. And that's why sometimes the thought does come to my head, like, even when if I go back and I watch like an old WCW Nitro with my buddies, I'm thinking sometimes it would have been nice to live in that era. It would have been nice to, witness that stuff live.
It was fun. We had the 70s, the wild 80s and 90s. I mean, I'm kind of glad I, was when I was. The only thing I do wish was different was, because when I was doing it most of my prime, I think until the mid-'80s it started, but we didn't have stuff like merchandising and video games and action figures and T-shirts and all that. And today, the guys, I can point out faults in, social media and talking weird and all that, but the reality, the guys today they're making, if you get a shot in WWE and that, you're going to be a millionaire.
Yeah, and even nowadays, it's kind of, in a way, it's obviously we'll never be back in the territory days, but with the rise of independent wrestling, it's a little bit similar, as some guys can even make money outside of WWE now and live comfortably that way.
It's hard. The indies, I wouldn't make a career. I'd make sure I had a job if I was doing indies.
Yeah.
But again, and the other part of this thing is with the guys is they're really amazing athletes. You got guys out there that are just awesome athletes doing stuff we never would think of, getting on the top turnbuckle and flipping backwards without looking and snatching on some guys to a table. And even, some of the stuff they're doing, it looks awesome, but it's also dangerous. I'm surprised more guys aren't hurt. They're really doing dangerous stuff.
It is very dangerous stuff. And
the sad thing is, the dangerous stuff and fantastic athletic stuff they can do don't mean much because it happens every single match, and the fans, it doesn't register. Okay, next match. Same thing.
I couldn't agree more. Making your moves means something. Yeah. Like, we could take a move like the suicide dive or the tope suicida, for example. Awesome move. You run through the ropes, out of the ring, usually into a crowd of people. It was so cool until it was starting to be done in every single match.
Yeah, every match. And then the way they do it, the cameras help the way they edit things, but half the time the guys run across, run back, dive, do a flip, and you got two guys standing there on the floor with their arms out, waiting to catch them.
Yeah.
Can you move out of the way?
Yeah, you got to do it the best way. And especially when I look at like a lot of the high flyers and flippy guys, I'm a fan of high flying wrestling, don't get me wrong, but I think, like, as someone, for example, a powerhouse, like, I'm planning to be more of a powerhouse technical type guy, I enjoy really watching Bret Hart work. And if I could give someone, as someone who's coming up, could tell a high flyer, like, someone who they should watch, in my opinion, it would be probably a guy like Owen Hart, who, he would do the springboard moves and he'd make them mean something. I know he was more of a technical mat-based wrestler too, but he would mix in the high-flying moves as well, but it would make sense.
Yeah, and then they would also save that stuff for, like, the end. They would build up to it, so when they did a fancy, big deal thing, it would mean something. Now they do it 3-4 times a match, and both guys do it. So you got two guys in the ring, both doing fancy moves, big dangerous moves back and forth, and I'm sitting here going, well, who's the good guy and who's the bad guy? They're all doing fantastic stuff.
And yeah, exactly. And something that's crazy as well is when you look at, like, things that some guys are even kicking out of, because I honestly feel like finishing moves... Yeah, right? Like, I think, first of all, finishing moves get kicked out of a lot these days, but when we have all these big moves, these top rope moves, we can end a match on those. It doesn't always have to be the finisher. You know what I mean? Like, two guys go up for a superplex, right? I feel like
I know, I'm with you.
That's a deadly move. I think that can end a match sometimes.
They do things now that mean nothing, that in my day the match would have stopped and the guy would have been rolled out on a stretcher with a big return next month. But, just like I said, every match is the same and they're doing dangerous stuff, but then you think they're dead, and then all of a sudden the guy reverses you and he's leapfrogging you, and that's you're dead like 5 seconds ago, Now it's my turn. He does all his... It's just, in every match, it's almost the same. Somebody's got to run across the ring. This is one of my favorites. Running across the ring into somebody's foot.
Yeah.
It's like every match. I don't know why.
And it's also like a lot of the little things as well. Like the guys aren't hitting the ropes as hard as they used to. They're not running into the turnbuckles as hard as they possibly can. Just making things seem a lot more aggressive. I feel like that could definitely help out as well. And
yeah, I mean, it's simple like the old days. To the wrestlers and the way they do things, it just has to be to them real. And if they make it look real, the audience can pretend easy was like without you said insulting their intelligence. Was we do have a different audience, and they are all smart, but they don't want to be. They want to escape reality for 3 hours of Raw or 2 hours of SmackDown. Just like going to the movies. Jurassic Park, people were jumping out of their seats, knowing the dinosaurs weren't real. But, the way it was done, it looked great. It looked real.
Exactly. And especially in times like this, I think it's very crucial. And I think another thing is size differences. We're seeing some guys a lot smaller than the bigger guys somehow pulling out the win. And I'm fine with that here and there, but when we see it as often as we do, that's also just another thing that makes it a little bit more questionable,
Well, yeah, and then it kills the big guy. I mean, I watched a match and these guys don't understand how to, make themselves a star either. I saw a match with Braun Strowman versus AJ Styles. And AJ, who I love, great guy, really great in the ring. But next to Braun Strowman, he looks like a midget. Strowman's huge.
Yeah.
So the match starts, and Strowman, goes after AJ. AJ runs out. Strowman runs around the ring. AJ moves. Strowman runs into the pole. Then AJ goes to the other pole, and Strowman runs at him. AJ moves, and Strowman hits the pole. Then AJ goes to another pole. Strowman runs at him. AJ moves. Strowman runs into the pole. Then AJ jumps into the ring in the corner. Strowman runs across the ring. AJ moves. Strowman goes between the ropes and smashes his shoulder into the pole. So you got this big guy who looks like a complete idiot beating the crap out of himself, wondering why people don't take him serious because he looks like a complete idiot and he's getting outsmarted by the bad guy.
Yeah.
So there's no bad guy, so it's just...
I think bigger guys should be booked way better. And another thing is, and we even talked about this on the phone, some of them are doing those moves that the smaller guys are doing. So where are these powerhouses that are gonna like if I'm in the ring with a small guy and they jump at me, I want to catch them and slam them. I don't want to jump back at them. You know what I'm saying?
No, I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, we can all agree it looks, way too choreographed. It's just, and that takes the fun out of the fans, because it's like, oh, another one. And every match is the same. There we go again.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It hurts the talent, and it's not as exciting for the fans.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I really agree with you there. And your career is so historical. As we talked about your time with Bruno Sammartino, having one of the greatest feuds of all time. You also had some great feuds with Scott Hall, and you wrestled for a while. You were even around for TNA, and you worked with AJ Styles, who we mentioned before. Who was your favorite person to work with throughout your time wrestling?
Well, you know what? People ask me that all the time, and in my day, and even some of the older guys, I mean, they were all smooth. Harley Race, Nick Bockwinkel. I had great matches. I had great matches with Tommy Rich and Sergeant Slaughter, and I mean, plus I was so good in the ring that it was, I could have an easy match with just about anybody. But the favorite, I mean, the most exciting to me and the biggest thrill and the biggest break was the matches I had with Bruno. Yeah. Especially in those days when, you walked out into the ring. There was no music or fireworks. You just walked out with a cop on each side of you, so you looked like a somebody.
Yeah.
And the roof would blow off the place. Whoa! People would go berserk. It was an energy, almost an addictive kind of energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was cool, but that was, the most exciting part. But there was a bunch of guys that were great in the ring in my day because you had to know what you were doing for two reasons. One, the promoter would fire you. But two is back in the day, there was no contracts. Again, there was no merchandising until the mid-'80s or so. And if you didn't sell tickets, if people didn't buy tickets, you didn't eat. It wasn't like today. Today, the guy's got a big contract, and there's really no incentive for them to really go out of their way to learn the psychology and to learn how to get to the crowd, because they're making a bunch of money just running into a foot.
Yeah, I agree, and I think ring psychology is really something that's lacked a little bit. And we spoke about Bruno Sammartino, one of the greatest of all time, probably the greatest of all time. And we got
He was the most loved. He was the most loved and the most believed of all times.
Yeah, absolutely. And the face of wrestling of his generation. Then we got guys like Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, The Rock, John Cena. Do you think we're ever going to have another big star like that, like to carry the business?
There's no doubt in my mind we could, but they have to create. It's kind of the situation the business is in now. Like you said, if Cena's gone, The Rock's gone. I don't know if Brock Lesnar's gone or not. They brought Goldberg back. He's 50-some years old. And Undertaker's gone. So the whole generation of big stars are gone. So WWE and even AEW starting up, the business is in this spot where they need to make new top stars.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. A new era started. The era of the old stars, is gone. And, they get too old and it's over. And so right now the wrestling business really needs some big stars. And you have to make big stars. And the problem they're having is they don't know how to do it.
Yeah, when you're watching like Monday Night Raw or AEW or Friday Night SmackDown, is there any guy that you see on TV where you just think, man, that's the guy? Like if they used him correctly, he could carry this business into the next generation.
Oh God, I hate to say stuff. There's some guys there, and there's no doubt in my mind. The smaller guys that fly around, they're fun to watch and exciting, and they do, dangerous, very athletic stuff. But it's still a big man business.
I agree.
There was a time, I think a couple of years ago, where Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe, and it was Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman. And as soon as the bell rang, Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe ran into each other, and they both fell out of the ring. And in one corner was Brock Lesnar, who's easy to believe in because he's a real guy.
Of course.
And looks like a guy who'll kill you, And in the other corner was Braun Strowman when he was over as the monster among men. And when they both were in the ring alone and took a step towards each other, the crowd changed. You could hear them change on TV.
Crazy.
They went from, whoa, and it sounded like you were back in the 70s.
I agree.
There's no doubt in my mind you can do it if you do it right, but get the guys that look right,
Yeah, of course. And when we say that, it's like we both enjoy watching the smaller guys. Like Daniel Bryan's one of my favorites of all time. But you know why he's one of my favorites? Because he was an underdog. The underdog cannot be the face of the company because they're the underdog. They're pretty much usually against the company. Whereas the face of the company is someone who you expect to win all the time. Hence why we'd have those huge guys like Bruno, Hogan, Cena, Rock, Austin. The bigger guys would be the face of the company. Then you'd have your underdogs like Daniel Bryan, Rey Mysterio, guys like that.
Well, even in the days of, Bruno, when Bruno was the champion, most of the guys he'd wrestle was 300-pound George Steele, 300-pound Koloff, 300-pound Killer Kowalski, and Bruno was maybe 265, but it looked like, a believable gorilla. So Bruno was still the underdog because the heels were usually bigger.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're right. The face of the company can be the underdog. I just mean more so like what the smaller guys are doing. Like they're the underdog 24/7. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And again, I mean, they're great to watch, and but when it comes down to the big rating and the big buy rating, it's still a big man.
A big man
business. I mean,
it'll always be.
Because the fans would look at it and go, well, I don't believe in wrestling, but I'm not getting in the ring with that son of a bitch. Jesus Christ, look at him.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's how I've always felt towards the guys like even Triple H, Batista, all those big guys who you'd see on TV, and even if you know pro wrestling is predetermined, you think I would not want to fight that guy. Absolutely not.
That's the silly part, is the wrestlers are on social media telling everybody it's predetermined.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they wonder why no one cares.
Yeah, of course. So, switching gears here a little bit, we spoke about wrestling for a while. On Wrestling with Awareness, mental health awareness has always been a topic of conversation. So, if you're comfortable with sharing, have you ever struggled with your mental health, and what advice would you give to people struggling?
Well, you know what? To be honest with you, I dreamed of being a pro wrestler when I was like in 8th grade.
Yeah.
And long story short, it worked out. I worked hard. I wrestled as an amateur between wrestling seasons. I did martial arts. I, forced myself to introduce myself to Bruno, and he was impressed with my amateur record. So it worked out, and I really had a dream that came true, and even lining up in the WWE Hall of Fame, being inducted by Bruno, like the official end of the dream come true. And I was so happy, doing what I wanted to do. And I'll explain why. It's human nature. But I never really had any mental problems because I had a happy life.
You were doing what you love.
Dream.
Absolutely.
And the human being, we're all a divine creator. We have something no other animal Mother Earth created has, and that is the unlimited power of our imagination. We're creators. If the human being wants to fly through the air like a bird, we create airplanes. I was a private pilot. I flew myself from town to town. If we want to go in the ocean like a whale, we built a submarine. Other animals can't. They're not creators. They work in a very small matrix. Snake does what a snake does. A dog does what a dog does. The human being, we're all divine. We're all a piece of what you would call God.
Yeah.
We're all energy, conscious, creative energy. And once people forget that, then they start becoming depressed and feel they have no control over everything, or they'll never get a break, or why bother. You get some people that, in terms of trying to escape a reality they're not happy with, they become alcoholics, or they abuse drugs, or get into heroin. I mean, they really don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Because down deep inside of us, we all know the body is just a temporary vehicle. We're only here for 70, 80 years, maybe, give or take, hopefully. And we never die because we're energy. We're conscious energy. The body is just a temporary vehicle to get in the third dimension, which is mass, density.
Yeah.
And I think if people would, getting depressed, nothing to do, especially with these lockdowns, forget the social media and the morons and the corrupt politicians. Go online and research guys who talk about nature. And there's a lot of hints in all the ancient manuscripts. I mean, we're finding out now through science that the pyramids were built 30,000 or more years ago, before the last ice age. The human race has been here for millions of years, but our history has been lost through a number of extinction-level events, which are kind of cyclical. We might be getting close to one now.
Yeah, of course. So when it came down to you and what made you happy, it was simply following your dream, and you were doing what you love. Do you
and it's hard in this day and age. It's really hard for most people to do what they love and create, because they have to survive. I mean, the human race, by a bunch of parasites, like these idiots that call themselves elites, which are evil parasites like George Soros and some other people.
Yeah.
We're all basically enslaved by money. So instead of creating and being happy with your divine imagination, you're busy because you have to get up at 9, go to work, do a job you may not like, but you have to make money.
Yeah, of course.
So it's it's a control system that a lot of people have to get caught up in. I just happened to love what I was doing, and the money came along with it.
Do you think that because we spoke about the teenage suicide rate, which obviously means the teenage depression rate is high as well. Do you think part of the reason why they're depressed is because of the amount of time they have to spend within the school system, because of the pressures of getting a college or university degree these days?
Well, yeah, I'm at my age, I'm almost 70, so I'm kind of removed, and my kids are all grown up,
Yeah.
But I know it, when I was a kid, when I was in high school, there was a tremendous amount of pressure. It was almost like, you must go to college. That's, there's no other thing to talk about,
And they
with my parents.
Yeah, and they tell you that's how you make money, right? So that would...
Yeah, you have to go to college so you could make money, because they knew you had to make money to survive. Even Bruno wouldn't start me in the wrestling business until I had a degree, because he knew that wrestling's not a guaranteed long-term career. You could be hurt a year or two and never wrestle again. He wanted to make sure I had something to fall back on.
Of course.
I hated college. I hated going to college.
Honestly, as an 18-year-old right now in university, I hate it too. But when we speak about being depressed and not being able to do what you love, do you think some people get their degree and they decide they want money so bad that they'll take a job that they don't like, and that's what makes them depressed? Simply running on money?
I think that winds up to some people, especially young people. I mean, you go to college, let's say you go to college and become a lawyer.
Yeah.
But you don't know, you're 18, 19, 20, 22, and then you get out in the real world and you realize, well, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah.
And this being a lawyer thing isn't exactly cracked up to what I thought it would be. I mean, I knew a young doctor, who had a calling to be a healer. And he was depressed because the only job he could find here in Florida was 7, 8 years ago, was at one of these stupid pill mills where big pharma, a bunch of greedy bastards, were pushing OxyContin like it was candy.
Oh, wow.
And they talk about, addiction. But OxyContin is synthetic heroin. And this young doctor was so depressed because he had so much student debt, to become a doctor. And he didn't have enough money to start his own practice and all that. So the only job he could find was at one of these pill mills. And, every 20, 30-year-old construction worker that fell off a ladder instead of getting 20 or 30 hydrocodones, or I think in Canada they had 222s. They have a little codeine in it. You know, get 20, 30 of those, you'll be better, kid. Instead, they're writing them 200 Oxycontins, and in 2 or 3 weeks, they're addicts. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
You know, they finally shut the pill mills down, and I think sued some of the big pharma companies. Thank God.
Yeah, man. It's crazy, and especially with addiction and like how things people can get addicted to. And a lot of the times it's sad because before things would be advertised as if they are safe. Like cigarettes were advertised as if they were safe. Vaping. Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you what the worst one of all is.
Yeah?
And it's advertised on television. I mean, God forbid you cannot show a commercial for a cigarette.
Yeah.
But drink alcohol. I mean, alcohol is glorified on TV commercials. And to young people growing up, they can't wait to drink because they're brainwashed into thinking, boy, I'm not going to enjoy a sporting event. You know, I'm not going to have a good party. I'm not going to have fun with the opposite sex if I'm not drinking. Alcohol is not natural. Mother Nature doesn't produce alcohol. It makes people stupid.
Yeah.
It ruins lives, and it's a poison. It should be illegal as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I can't blame you for that perspective at all. It's definitely isn't a natural substance to go into the body, and yeah, and even if it wasn't put illegal, at least restrict it a little bit better. Like it shouldn't be as easy for young people to obtain alcohol as it is.
Yeah, or some kind of smarter education so people know that this isn't natural. You want a little sip of wine, maybe, I don't know. But alcohol is really used by too many people to escape an unhappy reality. I hate this job, I'm getting drunk. You know?
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. And one question I do always like to ask to successful individuals like yourself is, what does Larry Zbyszko do to keep a positive, healthy mindset and stay motivated?
That's an interesting question. But you know what I do? I mean, like, at my age, I'm in the last cycle of life here.
Yeah.
You know, you start getting around 70, and I'm watching younger people, even my kids, and just the energy they have. They'll get up and drive here and drive there and do that and come back. And I'm sitting here floating in the pool going, I'll play golf tomorrow, but that's it. But, you know, I mean, because I know the reality, I'm really, you've got the mindset of, hey, I'm enjoying my golden years. I might be here 5 more years. I might be here 15 more years. But, you know, at the stage of life I'm in, I don't give a damn. You know, like I said, I don't do social media. I'm kind of a hermit because the world's getting kind of goofy where people have to say a certain thing. If not, you'll get canceled in cancel culture.
Yeah.
You know, or there's some stupid made-up thing. I have no idea. Are you woke? I have no idea what the hell that even means.
I hate the cancel culture shit. I think it's ridiculous and, like, pardon my language, but hey, really, because as someone who's growing up and someone who wants to pursue the professional wrestling business, I think everybody has said things that they don't mean. And I think everybody's been immature at a point and said things that later on they regret. So why would you cancel them for that?
I'm really enjoying life because I know what stage of life I'm in.
Yeah.
And I don't have to deal with the rat race anymore. And I never drank alcohol my whole life. I still don't drink. I never will. You know, so my health, I'm like a 30-year-old. The skeleton's a little beat. It's a little stiff and sore. But
that's a given.
It's
a given in the business.
I've been so lucky. I mean, I got friends younger than me that got, 2 artificial knees, neck surgeries, pins in their necks, back surgeries. I've had, a couple little knee scopes for cartilage tear. That was it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, I've been really lucky, but I also understand life. So I'm going to enjoy the next 10, 15 years or whatever. And when the doctor says to me, oh, you know what? You have stage 4 cancer. You got 2 choices. You'll probably be dead in 6 months, or if we cut out most of your organs and put a colostomy bag in and attach you to an oxygen mask and put you in a wheelchair, you'll look like a vegetable and weigh 80 pounds, but you might live 2 years. I'd rather go in 6 months.
Yeah.
I go to Vegas and max out my charge cards and see ya. But I'm not going through unnatural, ways to try to set some world record. I mean, my dad's 91, and he's still going strong. He's got a girlfriend that's younger. She's 82.
just taking care of yourself, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's just not. Yeah, I mean, don't abuse things. I mean,
of course,
it's not brain surgery. I mean,
moderation.
You have to have a little. Yeah, you have to have a little drink, have a little wine or something. But that's don't get into it. If you smoke, I mean, that's my one vice. I've been smoking for 50 years.
Yeah.
And I got a doctor buddy, if I ever need anything, but I never needed anything. But he checked me out once in a while, and my lungs are clear. I figured that out. I don't know why. They shouldn't be.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
It was probably the wrestling, because for 25 years, every night, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes.
Professional athletes definitely have that advantage.
You're always blowing your lungs out,
Yeah.
But again, when I say I smoke, I don't smoke a pack a day.
Yeah, it's limit.
It's
moderation. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's definitely the key. I thank you so much for answering all the questions. Before I do let you go, I do like to play a very quick game with all my guests. So basically...
Oh, that went quick. Yeah.
Yeah, it did go quick, yeah.
Yeah, I just hope it helps some people, because I know with the lockdowns and the economy and people with kids and they can't go to school. I mean, It's not an easy world. And if you watch the news, I don't know how Canada is, but in America, some of these news media, I mean, they're really bought and paid for by parasites, and they're trying to keep the human race divided.
I agree.
I mean, if you're black, you better watch out for them white people. They got white supremacy. Oh, if you're white, better watch out for them black people. They'll mug you. Oh, you're Chinese, they're a spy. I mean, it's just so stupid. I mean, one thing I want to say, and then everybody think about it and research it.
Of course.
There's only one race on this beautiful living planet, the human race. There's only one. And what happened was, over millions of years, because of extinction level events, small groups of human beings, the human race, some survived in climates that were hot and sunny like a jungle, and they developed a little darker skin to protect them and a kinkier hair to protect the top of their heads from the sun's rays. Other people survived in other parts of the planet, but it was too cold and icy. They lived in caves and underground cities, so they became the white people. But we're all the same people. There's no difference, and which people would know that. And the media would stop telling everybody we're different. We're not.
We're all the same. I couldn't agree more. I think that we have been divided for a long time, and I think it's time that we do our best to come together as one, because that's what will keep us a lot better. That's what will help us a lot more, and it'll prevent a lot of issues.
Yeah, just live by the truth, and you may have to put up with a world that's going kind of goofy and a job you don't like because you need money, but be true to yourself and get as close to nature as you can, and realize what reality is, and not what they tell you on your telephone or the TV set.
Agreed. And I think that's a very, very important message that everybody should definitely listen to. So I do like to play a quick game with everybody before I let them go. So I'm going to list off 10 names, and you can use one word or sentence to describe each of them.
Now, what do I do? I do.
To just use one word. So I'll say a name of someone in the business, and you just use one word to describe them.
Oh, okay. I'll try to be nice.
Okay, all right. Perfect. So we'll kick things off with Hulk Hogan.
Hulk, he was the right guy at the right time when the era was changing from the territories going away and national TV and pay-per-view starting.
Yeah, I agree. Kevin Nash.
Big guy, and his secret was, he didn't do a lot in the ring, and he didn't have to because he was so big, but Kevin knew how to talk. He knew the psychology of the business.
Absolutely. Very, very good ring psychology. Scott Hall.
Scott Hall was, I tell you, a very creative guy, very entertaining. And again, he was like Kevin, big guy, didn't have to do a lot because he was big, but he could talk. He created, that Razor Ramon, and actually was one of the guys that made being a bad guy cool.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely one of the first to do so. Dusty Rhodes.
Dusty was a great creator. He made a great character out of himself. But he also worked, in the offices for the, Georgia Wrestling, for the Crockett's and the NWA, in terms of booking matches and making stars. Dusty knew how to make a star out of somebody because he could see it and watch and go, hey, this guy could be money. Yeah, he knew that.
Absolutely. Then we can go over to his first son, Dustin Rhodes.
Well, Dustin, he came in, and I was around when he first started. They called him the Natural, and he was a big guy and could move good. I think he, got caught up in an era when things were getting a little too goofy, and instead of being the real deal, was walking around like he's gold dust, all painted up, but everybody knew it was Dustin Rhodes. So it's like, why are you doing that?
Yeah, definitely an interesting perspective on it.
I'm still trying to figure out why Dustin's still painting his face on AEW.
Well, speaking of AEW, we can speak about Dusty's second son, Cody Rhodes. What are your thoughts on him?
Cody, obviously a super smart guy because he got a hell of a promotion started. Hopefully we'll see what happens with it. But I really don't know Cody, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Cody kind of came along after I was, gone. I knew Dustin when he started, but Cody, I really don't know.
Yeah, of course.
But he's got to be a smart guy because he's pulling off some good thing here. We'll see what happens.
Oh, definitely, and I wish him the best. I think it'll help the business a lot. Sergeant Slaughter.
Oh, Sarge was a classic. I had great matches, and Sarge was one of these guys who looked at part. He looked like a Sergeant Slaughter would look with that chin sticking out. So he was smart enough to be what he looked like. And that was the secret to guys who became stars. They became what they looked like.
Yeah, everything about them oozed who they were. Absolutely. Kurt Hennig, a.k.a. Mr. Perfect.
Oh, God, Kurt. He was a great guy. I was really shocked when, they hear he died, young. I knew a bunch of guys that died young. And Kurt, he was one of the last generations that came along, him, Shawn Michaels, and Hall, and that had the chance to work with old-timers now like me. So he was the last generation that knew the psychology and was very good. And actually, he stole one thing I did. I used to do this thing where I'd be getting up and I'd have a guy kick me in the upper leg, and I'd hold on to the rope, and then I'd go up in the air and land on my back and get up again, and the guy would kick me in the leg, and I'd go up again and kind of fall down on my back. And Kurt saw that, and Kurt stole it when I quit.
Wow.
I was proud of him, but when Kurt did it, when the guy kicked him, he did a flip instead of coming down on his back like I did, so I wouldn't hurt himself. He flipped around and did a flip and landed, and I told him, I said, Kurt, Don't do the flip part and, do what I did or you're going to break your neck. And guess what? He broke his neck.
Man, absolutely. You got to be careful. AJ Styles.
Now, AJ, I mean, he's so good, and he's got a good charisma, and he had a unique movement. And he was one of the guys like Sean who came around that wasn't a big guy, but he got over.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder for a smaller guy to get over. AJ's very good.
Definitely. One of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. I don't think he gets talked about enough. And last but not least, we'll go with your greatest rival ever, Bruno Sammartino.
He was the most truly loved and believable wrestler probably ever. I mean, to sell out Madison Square Garden for 18 years straight he'll never be beat. Of course. Never be beat.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Definitely untouchable. Bruno Sammartino, fantastic. Much like yourself, the living legend, Larry Zbyszko. Thank you so much for hopping on. I really appreciate it. This was definitely a great episode, and definitely going to help a lot of people out there.
Well, I tell you, I hope it works out good. I mean, they got this vaccine. I hope that works, and I hope that, people don't blow it out of proportion. If you're old, sick, stay home. If you're young, it doesn't seem to affect you. Hopefully we'll get out of this quick. But, if everybody just remembers we're all the same, we're all a divine human being, and do what's natural, and don't let technology control your life. You control technology. They're coming out with artificial intelligence. That's their big goal. But just remember, all that nonsense is going to be exactly what it is. Artificial intelligence. It's only going to be what the human being can program it to do. We're a supreme being. We go on forever.
Absolutely. Definitely a positive and very true message to send you guys off. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just wrestled the mind with the living legend himself, Larry Zbyszko, on this episode of Wrestling with Awareness. Make sure to like, comment, and click that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.